When you play the Game of Thrones, you either... well, you know how it goes. Hey everybody, Alex here for Nerdy Inc., coming at you with a review of Telltale's Game of Thrones. Video game adaptations of films have had a checkered past. While a few standout selections have made for great plays, many of them had an air of cash grab to them. The notion of a video game version of Game of Thrones certainly ran that risk. Sure, the series has many spectacular fights and battles, but the intrigue of the show stems from the interpersonal relationships and backroom politics in the Seven Kingdoms. How best to make an interesting game? Enter Telltale. The studio prides itself on giving us options within a strong narrative. It's a choose-your-own-adventure book with a cinematic coat of paint. This is the perfect way to adapt a series that is so heavily predicated on choice and strategy. Fans of the show often yell at the television, upset with the way characters handle themselves in conversations or to whom they remain loyal. You think you can do better? Well, now's your chance. The writers of the game did a commendable job in crafting a story that not only gives the player options in conversation, but also combats the perceived arrogance that many may have going in. Playing verbal chess with Cersei Lannister, for example, is one of the hardest things you can do, and anyone who thinks they're equipped to take on the Queen may be kidding themselves. You can play the game, but there's a reason so many people lose. Playing the game is extremely important, too, because of the multiple plot lines that are so vital to one another. The series follows 4 different threads, 3 foresters and a squire. While they're scattered all over Westeros and Essos, there is an interdependence on one another that makes every decision vital. It's complex, interconnected writing that mimics the show to such a high degree that it borderline meshes with it. That's one of the greatest things about this game. It so wonderfully ties into the events of the show that you will, at sometimes, forget that this is a separate entity. Season 5 was airing on television while some of the game's episodes were being released, and there were several points in which I would say to my friends, "And how about that part where Mira did the..." only to remember that that actually wasn't part of the show. The game's ability to recreate famous scenes, introduce new ones, and still remain divorced and non-influential to television events speaks to the wonder of this game. It really is a beautiful story within the Game of Thrones universe, and proves just how many new stories can be told against a familiar backdrop. Speaking of backdrops, if you'll allow me one clunky transition, the art style of this game is gorgeous as well. It's essentially an oil painting, a beautiful sprawling canvas like you'd expect to see hanging in the walls of Winterfell or King's Landing. Sure, recreating Peter Dinklage's face won't be perfect, but it's a unique twist that adds to the fantastical setting in which we find our characters. Telltale's games all have the familiar characteristics. Big, all-or-nothing decisions, important choices, rich environments, and stylized artwork. But what makes Game of Thrones unique is the gravity of it all. It mirrors the show in many respects and draws you in with an overwhelming sense of love and loyalty that makes the show so much fun to begin with. You'll make some tough emotional decisions along the way, and there will be more than a few stabs to the heart. But that's what happens when you play the Game of Thrones. You either win or you die. And those are our thoughts on Game of Thrones. Do you have thoughts of your own? Let us know in the comments down below, and as always, for more games, comics, movies, and more, keep it right here on Nerdy Inc.